And then I'm just going to forget that it's recording. So this is IST 224, Introduction to Forensic Science. And hopefully everybody's got a syllabus. If you don't, I have a couple of, do I have any left? I think there were a couple floating around in the back. I printed up like 50 of them. And I think there's 48 chairs in this room. So hopefully there's enough syllabi. So this is the first section. So of course we're going to go through the syllabus and talk about the class. So, and keep calm, it's on the syllabus. So let me turn this light on that goes over the projector. This is the room they teach the med students in. And so we want to stay awake. But they've got the ability to record all the lectures. So recording the lectures could be very good. I think it would be really good. Then if we're running into the cold and flu season, we're running into people having trouble with their cars. We're running into all kinds of issues. And then the other reason I wanted to record the lecture is because I want to put it out on a public YouTube channel. And then this semester I'll update my public web page that I've created for the class. I haven't updated it in a while. And then generally people who are interested in forensics can watch it remotely, just for the heck of it. So. Now, if this light is too much, I might fiddle with the light a little. There's like a correct number of lights you can turn on here. Is that better? I think so. So we have 3 sections of 224 this semester. There's one that's an evening section, and it's also full. All the sections are full. So. And what we're working on is trying to get sections offered in the fall as well, so that we can keep up with demand. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm a professor here in Integrated Science and Technology, and I help work in the biotechnology program. I have a PhD in genetics, and I have a master's degree in physical anthropology. So the part where we talk about forensic anthropology, I always enjoy that part. I have a BS in anthropology, and I've worked for a number of years. When I was an undergraduate, I worked as an archaeologist and traveled around the world excavating and doing site survey, which winds up being a lot like looking at a crime scene. I worked for many years at a company called Promega, which is one of the 2 major manufacturers of the forensic DNA kits. A lot of my background is in population genetics and human genetics, so I'm pretty good on the DNA part of the class. And I'm pretty good on the forensic anthropology part of the class. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about forensics over the last 15 or so years. So, and it's a topic I find endlessly fascinating. So this is my email address. This is my office phone. I'm going to write down my cell phone number for you. Not because I expect you're going to contact me all the time, but occasionally people do need to contact you when there's a quiz or an exam or something. I don't see it. Got a Sharpie marker thing. No, they don't have any more markers here. Well, I can give it out. It's area code 304-617-6198. So if you text me is best rather than call me. If you get through to me, great. I'll see a missed call from an anonymous number, and I won't call you back probably. But if you text me, say, I'm in 224, you might say I'm in the Tuesday section or the Thursday section, and here's my problem. I'm going to have to miss lab, I'm going to have to miss the test, where are you? I need to talk to you. I'm around. I give my office hours here. So my office hour is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 to 12. And then after lab, Tuesday and Thursday, I'll be in the lab. We have another lab section starting at 5. So I'll be helping set up for the lab instructor we have for the 5 o'clock class. And so I'll be there at the lab in room 200, which is Science 200. So my office is here in the building of the Bird Biotech Center, but it's behind the locked swipe. So that's why it's helpful to have my cell phone number, because then you can text me and say, where are you? Because I'm often in my lab, which is on the same floor, and so I'm frankly, I get here about 8:30 in the morning, and I frequently don't leave till about 7 o'clock at night. And even when I'm not here, I live 10 minutes away. And so if you text me, I can probably connect up with you and answer your question and find you. Now I am going to try and be in my office during the office hours so I can read my email and try and get some paperwork done. But sometimes I'm around when you don't know I'm around, and it might be a more convenient time. So, as I said, if you text me or call me, let me know who's calling, and then that will make my life easier. So today our goal is to review the syllabus and the schedule. And so the grading of the course is for 1,000 points. So if you get 900 points or above, you'll get an A. If you get 800 points or above, you'll get a B, and so forth. So it's pretty straightforward. We have a different textbook this semester than we did in the previous times. This is the Forensic Science from the Crime Scene to the Crime Lab, the second edition. I think you might be able to get it electronically, but I'm not 100% sure. Has anybody tried to go get the book? It's been out for a while. It seems like a very nice book. We like it. There are online supplements available, but you have to pay for them. This one is a site that I found, but as I put the link in, I realized it was the Australian version of the site. So in Australia, it costs almost $50 Australian to use the online version. I don't know how good they are. I'm going to apply and get a free copy of whatever the online teaching tools are, and I'll evaluate them and tell you whether I think they're worth doing or not. But the book should be pretty good. So how are we going to break out that 1,000 points? And now, you do know this is a writing intensive section, so we are doing some writing, but a lot of the writing isn't what they call really high stakes writing. A lot of the writing is kind of writing up your results from your labs as you go along. And there are 2 exams and a final. And these are going to be multiple choice, true, false, and I also have essay questions. And so what I do to help students study for the exam is I give out the essay exam questions that you're going to have for the exam. And I give about 10 of them out, and then when it's time for the exam, I pick about 3 of them out. And half of the exam is from those essay questions. And the essay questions I don't cover, you can be pretty sure that they'll be covered in some way. That topic will show up on the multiple choice true false as well. So it acts kind of like a preparation study guide for students. Generally, I think people like the essays. If you're not a fast writer, it can be kind of a pain to write even 3 short essays. Usually students write maybe a third of a page to half a page for their answer. It's not on one side of a page. We're not looking at a book-length essay question, but you will have a chance to prepare them in advance. So let me know if you have problems keeping up on the writing, and we can make arrangements. I don't think there's any class after this, so I'm not one of these people who says, okay, it's 1:50, put down your pen. I don't actually care. As long as somebody isn't waiting outside the door wanting the room, then as far as I'm concerned, you can keep answering until you're done. So they're going to be worth 125 points each for the 2 exams. I've got a date set for them. And then the final will be comprehensive, and that'll be on the final exam day. You have the misfortune to have the last exam during the final exam week. They pretend this exam schedule rotates, but the exam schedule doesn't rotate. If you teach at 1 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you always have the last exam for the class. And if you teach at 9 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you always have the third last exam. You have the morning exam. And I found that out because I kept teaching these, and I kept saying, how come I keep getting the last exam? Then I realized they don't rotate the exam. So, but it's still a good time for me to teach, and frankly, nobody wants to take a class at 2 o'clock on Friday. So that's why we're here at 1 o'clock. So sorry about that bad news on the exam schedule, but you know it up front. So the lab is worth 400 points, but you will have a chance to actually earn 430 points. Yes?
On here, the syllabus, it says April 18th for the exams. I mean, April 9th, excuse me, but you have April 18th.
I think that's the week of. Hopefully it's the week of, not the, and I think I try to have the exams on Wednesday. So I think it's, or no, that would be the Friday in the week of April 14th. Nope, wrong, I'm looking at the wrong syllabus. I have too many syllabi this semester. So what does it say? Because the one in the schedule is the one we should go by, not the one from the slideshow. April 9th. Okay, that makes more sense, actually. April 9th. Typo on my slides. I will fix that. So week April 9th should be good. That way you've got all of the content from February, the rest of February, and all March, and then about a week of April. Because if you try to get more than 6 or 7 weeks on an exam, it's just like too much content, and nobody likes that. So so we'll do that on the exam date that's in the syllabus, and I'll fix this when I post it in Blackboard. So in the lab, you actually get an opportunity to make, as I said, 430 points. So what we're going to do in the lab is we've got an integrated series of a case. So we've got a complicated murder case that we're going to work on pieces of the evidence throughout the semester. And we're going to be introduced to the case and what the evidence is in the first couple weeks. And we're hoping to build a crime board so that we can try and make sense of it as we go along. And then we'll do 11 different labs that are associated with the case. There's another 3 labs that we won't do, but we'll give you the evidence from those labs so you can add it to the crime, so you can try and figure out at the end who you think should be charged in the crime based on your analysis of the forensics. So the whole lab writing, our goal is to have you create case notes so that you'll be writing up what was the evidence, how was it associated with the case, how did you prepare, what was the test you did on the evidence, and then what were your results, and how do you interpret that in terms of the case. Sometimes the evidence turns out to be very easy to analyze, and you'll have a very short report. Sometimes it's a little more complicated, and you'll have a more long, lengthy report. So, but we'll have the labs for you in Blackboard, and there's a pre-lab questions and there's post-lab questions. So every lab is worth approximately 30 points. So if we do 11 labs, that means that potentially you could skip one lab and not have it take away from your points. If you're diligent, you come to all the labs and you turn in all the work and you get more points, I'll give you those points. So it's not extra credit, it's just one more assignment that we do. So you can, rather than drop them, I just add them into the 1,000 points. Because, you lose a point here and a point there, you lose some points on your exams. I'm more, as I said, I'm really working on trying to record these lectures. So it'll be less critical to be here for the lecture and more critical to be there for the lab. I'm very keen on having you do the hands-on aspect of the lab. And frankly, most people really enjoy the lab. That's the fun part of the class, is you get to do stuff and so forth. One thing I don't think I'll be able to do, I have some videos, and I do like to show clips of videos or whole videos on particular cases. And I don't think I can record them legally on YouTube because they'll be somebody else's content. So if I'm showing a video, I'll try and announce it and I don't think I can videotape it. I'll let you know. Sometimes the videos are on YouTube already and I just show the clips. And other ones I've bought the videos. So I just don't think legally I can record somebody else's videos. So when you're doing the labs, then you're going to have a pre-lab and a post-lab questions that are associated. And so as I said there, you'll have 10 different pre-lab and post-labs, and the pre-lab's worth 5 points and the post-lab's worth 5 points. What you'll find is as you do the post-lab, a lot of that will flow into your lab evidence notes, your case notes. The case notes are going to be worth 20 points each, and I've got a form, I've got a grading rubric. It's pretty straightforward how to do it. A lot of the results that you get from the post-lab will be what you include in your case notes. So it's not as much, the post-lab helps you organize the case notes. There will be kind of a final lab summary. This is something new we're trying, where you kind of write a short assessment of which pieces of the evidence you're going to use and how you're going to bring forward charges in the case. So you're going to try and summarize this as if you were writing this up for the prosecutor, as if you were the forensic scientist writing up things for the prosecution. So as I said, we're going to start with crime evidence that's collected and make a crime board. And so if you do the extra work for all the labs, you get a little extra chance. It is hard to make up the missing lab. Now, if you know in advance that, like, 3 weeks from now that you're going to have to be somewhere for a sporting event, or you're going to have to be somewhere because your best friend's getting married, or some event is so well planned in advance that you know that you're going to miss that, you can let me know, and maybe we can slide you into one of the other sections if that's possible. If you know you're going to miss the Thursday lab, you might be able to go to the Tuesday lab for that section. But that usually isn't what happens. Usually what happens is somebody gets sick and then they miss the lab. So you're going to be in lab groups, so you can turn in some of the information to make up the points, but it's really hard to set up a whole lab and have you come and make up a lab. So that's part of the reason I urge you not to miss the lab. Struggle on if you possibly can to make the lab. But don't come if you have the active influenza. So what's going to be in the case notes? As I said, it'll be in the syllabus. I think did I print up the case notes handout? Nope. I will pass it out during the first lab. And I have a grading matrix. I'll post that. And I have a sample form for a lab that we're not going to do, so I can show you what some A work looked like from another student in one of the labs that we're actually not going to do ourselves. So I think that'll be helpful for you, that you'll be able to say, okay, that's what she's looking for. So as I said, there'll be this final report that'll be an overview of the case. So it's important to come on time, too, because when we sit down to do the lab work, we've got 2 hours to do it in, and some of the labs, you're pretty much working the whole 2 hours. Some labs you might finish in an hour and a half, but you're not going to get out of lab very early. There's sort of a warning: if you skip more than 2 labs without a university excuse, your lab grade is going to drop. And if you skip more than 4 labs, it'll drop by 2 letters. So that's the lab part of the grade, not your overall class grade. I don't usually have people, but there's always somebody who has some, health issue. You have 50 people together, somebody has a health meltdown. So, let us know, get a university excuse if you get sick. We can work more with that. So it is important to read the lab before you get to class, because if you've read it and you know what we're going to do in lab, you'll be able to do it more quickly. And as I said, the pre-labs are due before the lab, and the post-labs are due the week after. So we have a final paper as well. And so the final paper is worth 200 points. And so what we want to do is pick a topic on an aspect of forensic science. And So there, you get 15 points for picking your topic. I'm going to encourage you to pick your topic early, like in March. If you pick it sooner, that's great. I want to have a meeting with you and kind of write down all the topics. I don't want everyone to do the same topic. So it's sort of like first come, first serve on the topics. But there's other aspects of the topic. Most of these topics you could break into subcategories of the topic. There's an annotated bibliography and outline of the topic due in April, which will help you get sources. And then if you turn the paper in by April 24th, I will read it and give you a preliminary grade so that you can rewrite it and turn it in for a better grade. If you're happy with that grade, you can keep that grade. So, and then the final paper will be due the last day of class in May. And the final paper is worth 125 points, and this topic is worth 15 points just to make you pick a topic sooner. And then the annotated bibliography will be worth 60 points. So why are we all here? Are some of you CJ majors? Maybe show hands who are the CJ majors. So, and then are some of you, I get forensic chemistry majors sometimes. Any forensic chemistry majors? And I also get IST people from, just generally from IST, and they have to take a science class. And this one seemed more enjoyable. Any IST science people? And then we always get a couple people who just want to take a science class because they're in the College of Business or they're in the COLA, and they looked at the science selection and they're like, I can take a science class and a writing intensive class together. So do we have any of those folks? All right. So what you guys you'll be comforted to know that in fact I always get a couple of people and they usually enjoy the class a lot, and they aren't overdone by the science. It's not so much science that you can't process the science. So we'll start where you are and move forward. So, and it is a more interesting class. So the idea is it will help you understand forensic science concepts. We'll go through a lot of different methods of forensic science. And we'll talk about how people process things in experiments. That's why analyzing the evidence, we'll do a number of different experiments to learn how to use the technique. And then we'll do the technique with our evidence from the case. And so you'll learn some laboratory skills in the lab. You'll learn how to record data. You'll learn about how to analyze data in Excel. We have a lot of graphing of data in some of the labs. And so you'll learn how to manipulate things. You'll learn how to record things. This is the kind of lab class where you're more than welcome to bring your cell phone. And we take a lot of images of the data and record a lot of information about the data. So we'll learn a lot about forensic DNA collection methods, especially in forensic DNA analysis. And we'll learn about the various careers and aspects of forensic science and how people prepare for those careers, because this is really an introductory class. It's not intended to be, if you're really interested in forensics. There's a crime scene class you can take in CJ. We have a forensic DNA class. There's more advanced classes in chemistry you can take. There's more classes in forensics that are available for people. We'll talk a little bit about the law. So do we have any students interested in potentially becoming lawyers? Great. Because then that's good, because part of what we're doing is looking at the evidence and trying to build a case. So I've often found the students interested in the law kind of enjoy this part because they're trying to figure out who they're going to charge, how they're going to argue it. At the end of the semester, sometimes I've put on a mock trial. Depends on how the timing works, whether or not we need to have a mock trial or whether we can just write the report summary. So we will be talking about the law. And it will help you build up your scientific literacy about forensics and kind of demystify techniques. One of my real goals is for everybody to really kind of understand how forensic DNA analysis works, and so that if you're ever on a jury, you will have a good idea what they're talking about. You don't have to go in the lab and understand all the details, but as you sit there and they explain the evidence to you, you're going to be going, okay, I've heard that, I get that. So we want you to be able to critically evaluate the evidence and critically evaluate the expert witnesses as a member of the jury. And hopefully it will be an open atmosphere. What I find is the labs in particular, I get to know everybody in the lab, and you know, people enjoy it. It's a interesting class. So forensic science then is the application of science to criminal and civil laws. So it's not just criminal laws. For example, anyone have the misfortune to be in Kanawha County in the last few days? Or so you probably are aware of the potential need to do science reporting on civil lawsuits. So there are probably going to be, there's lawsuits being filed since Friday against this Freedom Industries that leak.
They still exist.
Well, they still exist for now. And
Good eyes.
well, I wouldn't be surprised if they go into bankruptcy. It wouldn't surprise me at all. They've certainly engaged in some very risky activity. But as the process goes, it'll be very interesting to see how that works. But people are undoubtedly collecting what will be evidence in the case as they're going forward. There may be civil penalties for sure assigned in addition to torts, in addition to civil litigation over who's going to pay for this cleanup. So it was a mess. And you know, what it makes you realize is that when you can't get your water, you know, restaurants can't open, schools can't open, daycare can't open, so even if your job was open, you can't take your kids to daycare, so that's tremendously inconvenient. You know, it was a mess. When schools aren't open, you can't send your kid to daycare, what do? You know, can you even go into your work? So it's a problem. And so somebody's going to have to decide, you know, was this a negligent activity, or was this freezing and thawing from the very cold freeze we had the week before, which caused a lot of damage. We had in the College of Science building a lot of damage from, there were some sprinkler systems on the walkway going across, and some of them froze because they weren't insulated. And so they started leaking, and there were leaks all over the building, and they've been cleaning it up and trying to dehumidify the thing. And then, of course, some of it wound up needing to be remediated and fixed, so it's been a mess. So, and that was just our little freezer problem. Maybe they had a freezing issue. We don't know what their fault was. But I assure you, somebody is going to be looking into the science of this and trying to figure out how bad was that chemical and what was the actual harm done to individuals by that chemical. So forensic science is really a broad term. A few people are trained and get a master's degree in forensic science, but those people tend to be, it's kind of a degree for professionals. So those people then are trained in forensic science and they go work in forensic science labs. But to do the research behind it, people who become experts in forensics often are trained in a specialized discipline. So forensic anthropologists, for example, usually go to school and get a PhD in anthropology or physical anthropology. People who are forensic entomologists are entomologists, and then they specialize in forensics as part of their degree program. So it's most people who are getting a PhD in chemistry or some of these areas are the people who are doing the forensics research, and the professionals who work in forensics labs often have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And the master's degree isn't even always in forensics. It can be in biology or geology or chemistry or some other science. So it's a real umbrella term, and there's a lot of sub-disciplines in forensics. There's even forensic geology. So some of the areas that are included are criminalistics. So this is the field overall of looking at crime scenes and aspects of solving crimes. There's a big emphasis on digital and multimedia sciences. So do we have any folks here who are in our digital forensics program? So that's good. I'm not going to go into as much detail on digital forensics as the other classes you have, but I'm going to cover it briefly. I'm going to talk a little bit about video because I actually think video is a very big emerging technology in figuring out what happened in crimes. And so we'll talk about that and how much the TV is like reality. There are lots of forensic engineers, and I suspect forensic engineers may be called upon to visit the site of the chemical leaks. There are specialists in odontology, or the study of dentition, teeth. So there's forensic dentists. Forensic doctors tend to be in pathology. You can actually go get your MD degree, and then you get a 2 or 3 year residency in pathology, and then you go take an additional residency in forensic pathology. So by the time you get to be a medical examiner who has an advanced residency in forensic pathology, you've spent a lot of years in school. So those people tend to be the ones who work on the victims. Physical anthropologists are the ones like bones. There are certainly people who are forensic psychiatrists and work in behavioral science. There are people who work on questioned documents and forgeries, specialists in those areas. There's a lot of specialists in toxicology because so many drug and alcohol related crimes. And there are people who are specialists in the law, forensics in the law, and introducing forensics. And there's a lot of people who are kind of generalists. There are specific biological forensics areas. So you get entomology and you get the people who work on DNA. They often have a background in genetics and biochemistry. So a lot of different recognized fields that are sponsored by the American Academy of Forensic Science. So they meet every year in February and have a big national conference. And it's there's also a regional forensic science conference that's available. And students can go to those conferences and are actually kind of welcome. And so if you're interested, I can tell you how you can find out about the conference. About every 3rd or 4th year, they're in Washington, D.C., and then they're all around the country. I've gone to the meetings. They're very interesting. So one of the things we want to talk about is this: how does the television aspects of forensics affect the courts? And this is a phenomenon that you may have heard about called the CSI effect. And the CSI effect is the belief, and law enforcement particularly believes this, that the juries want to see forensic evidence when they're going to have a conviction. And they think that the jury expects sophisticated, complicated analyses as a routine matter. And a lot of police departments don't necessarily do elaborate crime scene investigation for every crime. So I had the misfortune to have somebody break into my house a few years back. And so the police officer came over from Huntington PD. They had broken into my house by taking a tool from my unlocked shed and going to my back door. I was out of town. They smacked in a glass window to my back door, put their hand in, opened the door, went inside the house. They were in the backyard, so nobody was seeing them. And they went inside the house and rummaged through and took what they wanted and left. So when I called the officer, they looked at it, they looked around, they could see the glass. There was no obvious blood left over from cutting themselves or anything. They took checked around for fingerprints, but generally I was out of luck unless my goods showed up in the fencing system. A few years later, I was broken into again, and this time I was, was a little more fortunate because my daughter got really mad, and they had taken something that was fairly unique. A lot of things people take isn't that unique, but they had taken a coin collection she had gotten from her grandmother. And her grandmother had given her a list of every single coin that was in the collection. So she had the paper for the coin collection, which the thieves had left behind. So she started going to all the pawn shops to see who had tried to fence the coins. And they had also stolen her cell phone. And she called up her cell phone number, and she found out that the last numbers they were calling were numbers for taxis. So she was able to figure out they were calling taxis to get around. She went down to Mac and Dave's, and Mac and Dave's had seen them. They had not bought the fenced coins, and they gave a description of them. And then she went to another coin dealer, and they had just been there at the coin dealer. So the coin dealer was sorry that he bought these coins, and he knew these people where they had gone. He went to the Pizza Hut, which was right near the coin shop, and they called the sheriff, and they were arrested, convicted, sent to jail. And oddly enough, we got most of what they stole back, although they did get rid of my computer. And it broke up a crime ring. So, you know, but again, nobody collected any physical evidence from what we did. The best evidence that convicted the guys was that they had stolen some prescriptions from our house. And the prescription on the had my husband's name on it. So that's like suspicious, right? I mean, how much evidence do you need except to say, yeah, this was, you know, pain medication from Jack Husted. So that was pretty damning evidence. Plus, people had other descriptions of what had been stolen. So descriptions of what's stolen can sometimes be enough, but there wasn't a lot of elaborate forensic evidence about the break-in collected. So, so they're worried about people demanding more evidence before they'll convict these people. So CSI has raised a lot of public awareness, so that's good. It's made a lot of people interested in the field of forensics and in science in general. So as scientists, we like that. That's good. And there is more and more forensics being done. But, and it certainly enhanced the reputation of forensic scientists. But the CSI effect is probably a falsehood. So in CSI episodes, anybody a fan of CSI? Anybody watch Bones? That's the one I watch, I have to admit. And they're pretty preposterous, but not as crazy. There's a few things where I'll point out where they don't do that, but a lot of what they do is actually fairly, it's on the limits of what forensic science can do. The thing is, the toxicology and DNA tests they do are almost instantaneous. Now, that is everyone's goal. They would like more rapid tests. And they have funded a lot of research to make DNA tests that would be very accurate, that could be done in the police department, that you could do a presumptive DNA test and quickly rule somebody out or rule somebody in as a suspect based on that. And they could do the same things with some toxicology tests for drug use. But in fact, it can take months. There's many backlogs. And when we talk about video and photos, on the television, they're always sharpening everything up, like really well. But in fact, you're laughing because you know if you've tried to, is anybody an amateur photographer and enjoys taking digital pictures? You'll know if you zoom in enough, you're in pixelation. And now there are very fancy algorithms that were developed often for analyzing images from outer space that can be applied to try and make more sense out of things. But in a lot of cases, they can't get more evidence out of the picture than sharpening the image with some algorithms, some computer programs that are applied to make them sharper. They are not as good as you wish. Now, high definition video feeds are not common for people in banks and people in, outside a bar. And there can be video for a case, and it can even look very clear to the police that this person was guilty, and the jury will not find that person guilty. So there have been several cases recently, including some in Huntington, where the video evidence looked very clear to people and they still couldn't make sense of it. So you can't really sharpen it up beyond the limits of the technology. On the CSI, they can get a lot of meaning out of audio recordings. And again, audio recordings are like the video recordings. You can sharpen them up. You can remove background noise. You can separate it out, but there's a limit. You can't take it beyond the level of the technology itself. And the other one is they search these fingerprint databases and the employee records. If you watch Bones, you think, oh my gosh, everybody's got some kind of 3D imaging system for biometrics that will fit somehow with the 2D image from your driver's license. Like there's some hologram that's going to get made. The hologram does not exist. You know, they would like it to exist. They would like to do biometrics. And I have a nice lecture on biometrics and the limitations because it's getting better every day, but it's still not there yet. So maybe in a few years, I'll be able to say some of these things are, I'll have to update this slide and say, yeah, they're faster now than they used to be. They're a lot faster on these two things than they used to be. So they also quickly find information. They pull up old blueprints, they pull up old newspapers, as if they're all available to the people who are investigating the crime. And unfortunately, our law enforcement don't always have the best computer systems. And they certainly don't, maybe the National Security Agency's got access to all this information, but your average Huntington PD or West Virginia State Trooper doesn't have access to all these issues of old newspapers and blueprints of the building. It can take months to get access to some of this stuff, and they may just not be able to reach that information. So they have them making quick 3D animations, and if you've worked in 3D animation, you know that's just not that quick. Yeah, really not that quick. And in real life, they make these things. They do make the models, they do solve the faces, all this gets done, it just takes a lot more time. You know, so a lot of this stuff, all of this is possible, but requires a lot more effort on the part of the law enforcement. So one problem with the CSI effect, in addition to the juries expect a lot of evidence, is that their criminals are watching CSI. And so the felons are watching CSI and they're going, oh my gosh, you know, let's get rid of the evidence and I'll get off scot-free. So they will do things where they tamper with the DNA evidence that they've left behind. They'll use bleach to destroy DNA evidence, or they'll try and clean up the trace fibers, and they'll try and get rid of the evidence more carefully in order to escape. So this is a link to another example. See me later. This is from San Diego. Oh, I do not want to make this my new browser. Thank you, Bing. So this is the CSI effect affecting how crimes are committed. So this is a case that I'm going to talk about. This is a guy charged with murder who may have learned some of his efforts on how to avoid being charged from doing CSI. So we're going to talk about this case in a little detail. And it's an interesting case. This guy broke into a house and he was, let me go forward. So he murdered two women in Turnbull County in Ohio, so it's up in kind of southeast Ohio, and they were a mother and a daughter, and so the daughter was one of his customers using drugs, and so he came over to sell her drugs, and then he decided to rob her, and so he planned to rob about $50,000 from her, and that he thought was in the house. And he had a couple of accomplices who were waiting in the car. And he shot the older woman with a gun and beat the younger woman with a crowbar, and both died. So you can imagine if you're shooting people and beating them with a crowbar to death, there's a lot of blood. And so he actually had a plan for how to get rid of the blood. he was wearing kind of work boots, and he got rid of the clothes that he had, and he planned to exit the scene. So he removed his cigarette butts, but there was one that he missed. So there was one left with his DNA. He used bleach to remove blood from his hands, and he covered the interior of the getaway car with plastic sheeting and blankets, so he wasn't transferring any blood. And then he burned most of the bodies, but he left behind this blood stains that were stained from his boots. And then he tried to get rid of his boots. So it was one of those cold days, like we have sometimes in the winter, and it was in Youngstown's east side. There was a lake called McKelvey Lake, and so the lake had frozen. So he was planning to get rid of his boots that had blood and had left a footprint in the lake. So his original plan was go and dump them in the water, where probably nobody would have recovered them. But instead he threw them out in the middle of the lake, and the lake froze. So he left them out in the middle of the lake. So he had some bad fortune. Sometimes things happen just by a quirk. So a news reporter from the TV station went out to do one of those spot reporting things where they're sitting there with their mic and they're going, hi, you know, here we are at the lake, look, it's frozen. And she had her television crew there, and they're looking at the frozen lake because it didn't usually freeze. And then, you know, after they do this, they turn off the cameras and they say, well, what's that out in the lake? And they go out into the middle of the lake, and there's these bloody boots and clothing. And so they knew there'd been a murder, and so they contacted the police, and so the boots were recovered, and, you know, the crime was solved. And, you know, and with forensic evidence, then the accomplices also told the story of what happened in order to have reduced sentences. So this is definitely a case, though, where the guy was trying to clean up the crime scene, but the take-home lesson is, although people are trying to do that, it's surprisingly hard to completely clean up a crime scene, you know, and there's a lot of evidence that gets left. Well, I'm going to stop here, and I think what I want to do is end the show, and then I go to Camtasia, and